The best telephone pre-approach I've ever heard. When could you get over here? Is that what they say? No, they're supposed to resist, aren't they? So what do they say? Give me an objection.
I'm interested.
I'm not interested. I'm insurance poor. Something like that. Is that right? Well, where do you go when they say no? Where do you go when they say no? Now, here again, you'll notice in your notebook that we've given you some places to go when they say no. But let's remember it this way. There's 3 parts to the telephone pre-approach. 3 parts. After you asked for the appointment, if they object, then we say you come back and give them 3 chances to object again. If they object the first time, we give them 2 additional chances. And here's the technique that we propose. Technique number 1 is to ignore the first objection. Now, why would I stand before you here today and tell you when somebody says I'm not interested, or I don't have time right now, or I'm insurance poor, or my brother's in the business, or my next door neighbor sells insurance, or I just bought a policy, why am I telling you to be calm and cool and ignore that objection? Why? Most of the time, it's what? It's a smokescreen. It's not real. So don't try to deal with an objection that's not real. Say something like this, and here again, you'll find this in your workbook. Say something like this. Well, I can understand why you'd say that. They say, I don't have enough time. Or I just don't have the time right now. Or I'm insurance poor. Or you'd just be wasting your time. Or I'm not interested right now. Well, I can understand why you'd say that. And I'll take that into consideration when we get together. When could we get together? Just ignore it. Stay calm and say what? I'll take that into consideration when we get together. When could we get together? Notice that I've used the word together twice in about a 3-second segment. Did you see that? Signaling and putting into the prospect's mind that what? We are going to get together. Well, I can understand why you'd say that. And I'll take that into consideration when we get together. When could we get together? Oh, he says, look, listen, I really just don't have the time. Come back with the same objection or a different one. Back off and say, let me ask you a question. So the second technique is back off and say, let me ask you a question. Then you ask a question that pertains to that particular objection. Now, when you say to somebody over the phone or in person, you say to somebody, let me ask you a question. What's that do for you, the salesperson? When you say to somebody over the phone or in person, let me ask you a question. What's that do for you, the salesperson?
Control.
Keeps me in control, gives me time to think, and you know what else? It forces you to ask a question. And you know what? That's pretty important. Rather than hammer them, it forces you to back off and ask a question pertaining to that objection. My brother's in the business. Oh, well, let me ask you a question. If I were to show you a plan as good as the one your brother would show you, yet mine had a better interest rate, who would you buy from? Me or your brother? I just don't have the time right now. Well, let me ask you a question. When's the last time you took a good look at your Social Security benefits? When's the last time you reviewed your insurance program? By the way, over the phone, we say that's one of the all-encompassing questions. It almost can be used on any objection. Well, let me ask you, when's the last time you reviewed your insurance program in depth? Or when's the last time you bought a policy? So back off and ask a question. Now, what's the third step? The first step is to ignore it and say, I take that into consideration when we get together. When could we get together? Second step is back off and ask a question. If they still object, ask them one more question. Give them one more chance to say no by using this question. Would you grant me the courtesy of 30 minutes to get together with you to show you the kind of work we do? Now, what's the key word in that sentence? Would you grant me the courtesy? Now, if they say no to that one, what are they saying? I'm going to be discourteous. No, I don't want to see you. Now, if they object 3 times, then we say, Be very calm, be very polite, say thank you very much for your time, I enjoyed talking to you. Take their prospect card, tear it once this way, turn it around, tear it once this way, take it and throw it in the waste can and kick the waste can across the room and go on to the next number, right? Right? Get it out of your system and go right on. There are going to be objections, but what we've tried to do here is give you a 3-step technique to handle the objections. So that's the telephone. That's the use of the telephone. Now, let's review very quickly. The 4 telephone tips are what? Be brief, sound energetic, be enthusiastic, be prepared. Secondly, talk a little faster, talk a little louder, a little clearer. Third tip, first 16 words, vital. Fourth tip, be ready to strike, right? Now, what's the technique? First 16 words, and I'm ready. And I'm going to use the prospect's name, first name if possible, second word out of my mouth, hello, Bruce. And the first 16 words, I'm going to have that down pat and rarely change it. All right, then I go to the power statements. And the power statements are a series of power statements that I'm going to use to get their attention. And they vary with each prospect. I may have some pet power phrases that I use, but they'll basically vary with each prospect. Once I've given them power statements and I've gotten their attention with some kind of a power statement, I then use a couple of closing questions to get the appointment. And we always want to remember that over the phone, what? The goal is not to sell insurance. The goal is to get an appointment under favorable conditions. If they object, I got my 3-step technique, right? I'm going to ignore, say, I can understand that. When's the best time for us to get together? I can understand that, and I'll take that into consideration when we get together. When would be the best time for us to get together? I'll back off if they still object and say, let me ask you a question, and then ask a question that's pertinent. And then if they still object, I come back with one last thought. Would you grant me the courtesy? So that's your telephone tips. That's your telephone techniques. If you'll take them and use them, then this telephone will pay every day. Thank you.
This video program, workbook, and audio soundtrack have been produced by Kinder Brothers and Associates and Dryden Communications. For additional information concerning sales and management training resources, as well as platform personalities, you may call Kinder Brothers and Associates at 1-800-372-7110.